Hi, my name is Benedict for Higher Hertz. This episode may not please everyone, but what I've encountered does not please me. Anyone who knows me knows that I have a bit of a beef with Waves, but they came out and they ran adverts for their new product that they say is so amazingly good based on its AI neural blah 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 that it can do things like remove the noise of a blender, remove the noise of air conditioner. I think there's a hairdryer. Yes, there's a hairdryer and traffic noise. And for someone who does a bit of podcast work and well, sometimes a bit of background noise is there. It's like, okay, maybe they really have got something that's better. So I went in with some sort of sense of trepidation that how is it that they've suddenly got this technology that's so far ahead of what anybody else has got, but nonetheless try to be open-minded. Yeah, I think as you'll see, there are some serious questions to be answered by Wave's marketing team at least. Yes, as usual, Waves, everything's always on sale. Products supposedly 90 or 150 or whatever it is always $29 now. And if you buy multiple plugins, then you get them for free. Waves has worked out how to lighten people's purses as they're moving past. Not an approach that I find valuable or honourable. And nor do I think it supports their supposed primacy in the industry as being technologically the best. Personal 2 cents, I think they lost that a very long time ago, but don't want to bog down in that. I really want to point to the discrepancy between what these videos show us. Now, bear in mind, when you run an advert, that advert has to be accurate. You can't make claims that are inaccurate. Yes, there is, at least under Australian law, because I used to run adverts, there is under Australian law the exaggeration and puffery. So if I have a pie shop and I say my pie right here is the best pie in town, unless I can point to awards or some kind of proof that it's the best pie in town beyond, Luke Skywalker saying it was the best pie he ever had, it's not possible for me to actually make that as a realistic claim. If I can show that over the last 4 years I had the award-winning pie, fair enough, I can make that claim because I can back it with award-winning pies on these years. If, however, I say, as I introduced earlier, Luke Skywalker's favourite pie, I've now become somewhat absurd. If I say this is the best pie in the universe, I can run that as an ad because it's what's called exaggeration and puffery. But in these adverts, these videos against, this product, Clarity VX versus traffic noise, hairdryers, blenders, they're actually saying this is literally what their product is doing. They are showing us, supposedly, the product doing this. I'm not going to show you those. Go find them and compare it yourself. But what they show and what happens based on what I'm doing here is not reproducible. It doesn't pass the science test, and I do not believe that it passes the fairness in advertising, the fairness in marketing, the fairness in selling a product. This makes a very specific set of claims in what it will do, and I can't make it do that. Therefore, I am calling, well, BS. Let's have a bit of a look. Here is my raw vocal. You can see them all color-coded. Number 3 is just the clean, raw vocal. Do the housekeeping first, so you can't sort of try to question my method unnecessarily. We will compare to Reaper's Refer as being a free noise reduction, so it gives us a sense of, well, what might something else achieve? And then, of course, the Waves Clarity. Oh, I said CX. Let's just change that to VX. Seeing what it's all about accuracy, fixed. There is a little bit of EQ, as is normal enough for voice. I set this up after noise reduction just to try to bring back some of what was there. So if it seems a little bright on the clean voice, I don't think you can notice a difference, but every time we do one of these processes, we lose which is one of the issues that I have. A little bit of compression, and then as usual over here, compressor, again, just to manage the mix. Oh, the saturation knob, let's get rid of him, because he can introduce distortion, which we don't want to have, and then just making sure that our levels are basically okay. So I've kept it pretty darn clean. So let's have a listen. Let's see what happens when Benedict speaks, and there's all kinds of noise in the background. Jane's making coffee, so spoons. Now suddenly playing my keyboard, which is very, very noisy. This Panorama might be a nice keyboard, but I find the keyboard really noisy. Oh, and I better do some typing, as well as click my mouse quite a lot of times here as I speak. And let's see what happens with the plugin. So that's our raw vocal. Now let's go back. Bearing in mind that in the adverts, they show, well, with the traffic noise one, they show rapper guy singing supposedly on the street, New York or somewhere or other. There's a whole lot of road noise and just ambient sound behind him. They turn the knob, and suddenly there's this pristine vocal. I expect that because I have been given that through 4 or 5 different videos. Let's look at what we get. Let's see what happens when Benedict speaks, and there's all kinds of noise in the background. Jane's making coffee, so spoons. Now suddenly playing my keyboard, which is very, very noisy. This Panorama might be a nice keyboard, but I find the keyboard really noisy. Oh, and I better do some typing, as well as click my mouse quite a lot of times here as I speak. And let's see what happens with the plugin. Now, if you think that that's a pristine vocal sans spurious noises, then you and I are probably going in completely different directions. Yes, it has reduced noise to some extent. The keyboard noise, the Panorama noise, is playing my keyboard kind of great, but so is the kind of noise that they are claiming to disappear, which is very, very noisy. The vocal is brutalized, truly brutalized in every point here. Let's see what happens when Benedict speaks. And when in their adverts, when they turn this up to 100% process, we've got a pristine vocal. Yet I cannot do this. Now I will say right up front, I am happy, Waves, for you to have this. You can even have the whole Reason project if you want. I'm not trying to say that this could be, absolutely perfect refutation, but I can't fault it. I've been in this game for 30 years, and I can't fault what I'm doing. This does not match your advertising. Now, if somebody just showed me that advert, or that collection of adverts, and remember when I first saw them, I just saw them, and said to me, hey, Benedict, how do you think they've done this? I would say they've recorded a singer in the studio. They have got some B-roll footage for video, which may or may not have had streetscape noise in it. Otherwise, they've gotten some streetscape sound effect from somewhere, royalty-free library, whatever, don't care, somewhere. They have then created a mix of several different channels, so raw voice, background noise, and as they showed this knob moving, they've merely reduced the sound of the background. Because in their videos, the original voice comes out completely unaffected. Now, in my experience, every time you work with FFTs, fast Fourier transforms, and IIRs and what have you, it's what I refer to as cheese grater. In other words, it turns this thing into many, many bands. And then it tries to work out what's going on. This pretend AI neural network. As I said in the last video, there is no such thing as a positronic man. It's in Silverberg's book, or the god-awful Bicentennial Man if you watch the movie, but it is not a reality. So neural networks, I don't know what they say what they're really advertising here. Don't actually care what it's doing under the surface, but I care that it does what it says it's going to do, and it doesn't. It sounds like garbage. Which is very, very noisy, this Panorama. Now, if they showed me a fair advert saying, look, it might be a nice keyboard, but we can do a bit, but nobody's going to handle that. Honest, fair. But their advert says that it's going to handle extreme extraneous noise with no artifacting of the voice. That's not exaggeration and puffery, that's their claim.
Really noisy.
This is
Ooh,
their
and I
result.
better do some
Not okay. Let's look at refer. Refer is from the Reaper people, and you can run it as a VST. Seems to have the same thing. We can look at our fast Fourier transform size. Kenny Joyer suggests 1024, so that's 1024 frequency slices is the way to go. Put it into subtract mode. We find a quiet bit, so I chose this bit here. There's just a little bit of mouse clicking. Set this up, and then let's see what we get.
Now suddenly playing my keyboard, which is very, very noisy. There's keep it really noisy.
If we go to where it roughly was when it chose its profile,
Ooh, and I better do some typing.
yeah, we get some pretty nasty artifact.
As well as click my mouse quite a lot of times here.
But if we pull it back, we don't lose any of those extraneous noises, but Refer never suggests it's going to do those. We do reduce any background noise or room sound, which there is very little of in this case. There is a trade-off. There is always a trade-off with these things, that the voice gets a little bit cheese-gratery, a little bit robot-y. We lose natural nuance. So if we look at,
as I speak, this and noisy. Oh, and I better do some typing as well.
When we have Refer on, we get a little bit of that artifacting. Some people like it. I do not like it. Now, it's expected, probably, that Waves will do that, and yet their advert doesn't show it that way.
So now suddenly playing my keyboard, which is very, very noisy. This Panorama might be a nice keyboard, but I find the keyboard really noisy. Oh, and I better do some typing.
So if we set it to the clarity to simple, sane sort of things, it has roughly the same effect as Refer. It may not be quite as bright, but it's roughly, it's a personal choice as to the sort of EQ profile of what comes out. So it'll do a similar job, but the question was never, will this do a similar job? The question was, will this get rid of huge amounts of impossible extraneous noise?
As well as click my mouse quite a lot of times here.
No. There is a second profile we could use, which says that it's going to work with more severe ambiances and keeps mostly main voices. Close mind.
Let's see what happens when Benedict speaks, and there's all kinds of noise
spoon
in the background. Jane's making coffee, so spoons. Now suddenly playing my keyboard, which is very, very...
This it just can't deal with at all. It's ghastly.
Noisy. This Panorama might be a nice keyboard, but I keep it really noisy. Oh, and I better do some typing, as well as click my mouse quite a lot of times here.
Now you notice that the mouse clicking is still perfectly there inside the vocal. It has not gotten rid of it. When it indicates that these sorts of things are going to go away. They were never going to go away, so those ads that they have run, I still call as being total unmitigated BS, because the product doesn't seem to ever give the indication that it's going to do what it's going to do. It makes grand claims. In the stereo version, there's a couple of methods for analysis, one being that it will sum the two inputs to mono. Now, this is mono anyway, but nonetheless, that's probably the more sort of sensible approach. That's what we're hearing. There's also a double mode. It does warn that it can use more CPU.
This Panorama might be a nice keyboard, but I find the keyboard really noisy. Oh, and I better do some typing.
Sounds pretty terrible. As to what that's really going to do, don't know. There's then a adjust the width of the output signal. This strikes me as a slightly sneaky control. I can't remember where it was defaulted to, but it was not defaulted to 100%. Okay, if it's a vocal, then we want it to be mono. But if for some bizarre reason, and I keep seeing people do this, you have recorded your vocal and your room in stereo, the moment you collapse that to mono, even by a small amount, you would have dramatically reduced the impression of the room. So this strikes me, and I may be wrong, but this control here strikes me a lot like those saturation or sound goodifier plugins that do nothing but add a couple of dB to the output. Of course they sound better, they're louder. Of course this sounds less roomy because you just reduced the stereo-ness of it. I don't know. I'm not going to get too far into that, but this is the one that I can't help
as
but
well
really
as click my mouse,
shake my head over, because the adverts are super, super clear with what is going to happen here with heavyweight noise, and that it's going to come out with a perfect, unaffected voice.
It's very, very noisy.
This is not perfect or unaffected. You might mount an argument
really noisy
that Refear has had little to no effect on the voice. I don't agree, but you might mount that as a reasonable argument.
Oh, and I better do some typing.
But that, you could never mount an argument that that is a pristine voice. So, therefore, I can only conclude what I did right from the beginning, that Waves adverts are fake. That they got somebody to record in a studio. They then added these sounds that they took away. That the program was never involved in the adverts at all, that all they did was say, okay, well, we'll reduce the volume of our sound effects that we have flown in to give the impression that they're there in the first place. They were never there. They've merely gone, oh, look, now we've got our pristine vocal. Shame, 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 Waves. This is just, it's beneath everything that you claim to stand for. Again, Waves, if you want to take this and can openly show, not some kind of like, oh, look, we've done it and it's great, openly show your product actually doing this, I'm happy to retract. I'm happy to say, okay, but based on grabbing your product and using it based on the shoestring manual that doesn't explain what this thing is, I think it's just trying to tell you what control you clicked on, but it should have been the manual. If I can't make it work, I cannot help but to say, this is embarrassing. So we're not going to get into a good and bad, because I don't think there is any good. I think it's kind of okay at best. I think that Refear is probably doing a nicer job if we're just doing the general, let's reduce the room hum kind of thing. The bad is that it does not meet promises made in adverts at all. Therefore, don't know. So final words are grand promises, which if it did what it said it would have done, would have probably overcome my existing problems with Waves and their marketing and reselling you the same products approach. But all it's done is dug a deeper hole. If that bothers you, again, you're welcome to take my recording and show me exactly how it works. But again, just simply saying, oh, you don't know what you're doing, without showing me how I'm wrong in a provable, duplicable manner, merely makes you rude. And we will either delete those comments or I will point out to you how incredibly rude you are. I'm sorry if that seems aggressive, but I've been attacked several times recently where I have raised valid arguments, not here at Hertz, that happened in the early days, but I've been attacked several times recently, and it is not cool. We are all working in the same world. I have put forward a rational argument here. It's well reasoned. If you don't agree, that is fine. I'm happy to have the discussion, but if you tell me I'm wrong, you need to show me how I'm wrong and show me how to get it right. And if you can't do that clearly, then you don't have a right to the refutation of my claim, because my claim stands based upon what I'm showing you here. Which is that
there's all kinds of noise in the background. Jane's making coffee, so spoons now suddenly playing like
this is not as advertised. All right. Sad, but I felt like this was really a necessary thing to do, because it's, well, the industry's too full of this stuff, and Waves have led a lot of this, and this is just to me untenable as a professional that this should happen. If you have questions or anything, as I said, down below, we would love you to hit subscribe as well. There's also another path of information over at higherhertz.com. Remember, this is a discussion, not an opportunity for abuse. I have not been abusive of Waves. I have called them out. And I have also, again, offered them the opportunity to deal with this head on as gentlemen. So let's all make sure we behave that way. Higherhertz.com if you want to pop on over there. Otherwise, have a great day.